Hello, 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 hello.
I'm Ryan.
Wagwan. I'm Jake. Hello. Maybe I should take that again.
No, we're going with that one. And together,
we are functionally literate. That is
that's
what
right.
we are.
Today, we are reading 14 by Peter Kleins, chapters 70 through 76.
Yeah. That's
so,
right.
let's see. What happened where we left off?
They were in the. I nearly said they were in the Never Never. I've started listening to fucking Dresden Files.
The Kavach building and the people in the Kavach building went to another world.
They did.
It's really weird there.
Interdimensional plane of existence.
Indeed.
The other side of the keyhole.
Yeah. That's the way Oscar explained it.
Yeah.
It's like, you could put a key into a lock on either side. The important thing is that the key, like the same bits of the key, are in the lock, regardless of which side. Which, I mean, this really only applies to, like, old school keyholes.
Yeah. Yeah,
like,
that's
locks
fair.
aren't really designed that way anymore.
No, they're not. But in my mind, it's like a kind of like a giant padlock. Like the building's a padlock,
It's kind of still Earth. I have a speculation about this.
Yeah.
I think they're on another version of Earth that was, like, ravaged by these squid whale things.
Yeah, that's that. But, like, millennia ago.
Something, yeah. Because, like, when they're on the roof looking at everything, like, the ground still kind of lines up, like the mountain view and all that, it still kind of lines up with what they would expect back home.
Yeah.
It's just there's no buildings.
Yeah. Yeah, like, that is the case.
As I recall, Roger gestured in a direction and was like, look, over there, that's where we would normally see the Hollywood sign.
Yeah. And then they see, like, the squid whales kind of, like, sucking up trees in the distance and...
Indeed. Yeah.
Floating away.
A rare tree, because it's all desert.
Yeah. Which is so... I don't know, why wouldn't they have sucked up and eaten the tree already?
It's a good question. I don't know.
They were saving
maybe to just
it.
kind of maybe to just kind of represent that, like, these things literally, they will eat anything.
Yeah, that's fair. That is true. But we're about to find out more of what they eat as we push forward into this book.
Sure will. So where we left off, Tim suggested that they go search Oscar's apartment and see if they could find anything.
Yeah. Chapter 70. How Clive disposed of the bodies and how Nate, Veek, and Roger searched Oscar's apartment.
So yeah, Clive, he got the shit stick. He was the one that had to get rid of the bodies.
Yeah, they talk about, in this chapter, they talk about, like, when you have a gross job, there's, like, a level of, like, disassociation that people will do to step out of the experience of that job, which is a very real thing. If something's really gross...
he just focused on the work. He focused on the act of moving the body. He wasn't focusing on anything else.
Yeah. And it was like, Tim told him how to, like, tie the legs together because it makes them easier to move. And he was, like, shuddering at the thought of how Tim knows that.
Uh-huh.
Which cracked me up. And, like, he's dragging the bodies, like, down the stairs. And I was like, my first thought was like, ooh, their heads bouncing must have been horrible. And then the very next line after I thought that was like, the way that their heads bounced made Clive very uncomfortable.
And then, like, he started thinking of, like, the corpses. And so this was interesting because, like, the book explains to us what the uncanny valley is. Which really goes to show how dated this book is.
Yeah. Not many people knew what the Uncanny Valley was back then, I guess. It wasn't as common knowledge. back then. Whereas now everybody kind of understands the uncanny valley.
It's like they looked just human enough that it was like creepy because they didn't look right. So Clive had an easier time with moving Auntie Bradbury's body because she looked so freakish. She obviously wasn't even close to human in his mind. He was like, she fell off of the uncanny spectrum. She just looked like a freak.
Yeah.
And then there is like this interesting description of the back patio. So like there was a clear division between what came over and what didn't.
Yeah, and it's like the back wall is missing, isn't it?
Yeah, the back fence is gone, and then like at the end of the concrete slab, it's not like a solid cut. It's all kind of jagged and jacked up, and then there's a 10-foot drop.
Yeah, which is kind of cool.
He takes the bodies to the back patio, and then the perspective shifts to Nate at this point. So we get to see Oscar's apartment, which is the coolest one.
So, is it the coolest one?
In my opinion.
Okay, please just run through what was in Oscar's apartment again, right?
So, it takes up an entire corner of the building, spanning 3 floors. This dude has 3 floors of apartment.
Jesus.
With stairs.
Wow. To be fair, that is a nice apartment. And for what, 500 a month?
Oh, come on, let's be real. That dude doesn't pay rent.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. He lives there for free. And well, he did anyway.
The problem was, as cool as this apartment was, there was nothing notable there. I didn't find anything cool. Like, the ground floor of his apartment was like his office space, but he didn't even have a computer.
Yeah, but
he had no notes. He had no research. He didn't have anything.
And there was a funny exchange about the no computer thing. Veek was like, "Who the fuck doesn't have a laptop?" Nate was like, "Maybe laptops just don't work in this room. You know, there's some weird shit going on in this building." Maybe it's like, oh, laptops don't work here. And Vika was like, or he's just fucking old and doesn't know how to use them.
I think it's more likely the second.
Yeah, literally. It just made me laugh.
Yeah, no, the only thing they found was Oscar's key ring, which had keys to all the doors, including 14.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which one of those won't work anymore, which is arguably a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody should be opening that door ever again.
Yeah, I don't think that's it's a wise idea to open that. I mean, who knows? Who knows if anybody will open that door again?
But yeah, so like they all split up and spent like an hour searching the place. Roger didn't really find anything. And neither did Nate, and all Veek found were some keys. And so Nate was like, okay, well, we gotta go get Oscar. We gotta go find him. And that's kind of how the chapter ends.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, it's a fair enough kind of like assessment of the situation. Yeah. I mean, what would you do in that situation, like realistically?
I would not leave that fucking building.
Oh, I know, right?
Absolutely.
But it's
not. like as soon as Nate started going on about how they were gonna split up and some were gonna go find Oscar and the rest were gonna like need to figure out how to fix the control panel, I would be fixing the control panel. I'm not fucking going out there. Are you crazy? No, never. Chapter 71. How the away team set out for the tower and how they discovered nothing appeared how it seemed. So this chapter starts with their designated away team, which is Nate, Tim, Roger, and Veek. They're outside on the steps. Mm-hmm. The front of the building has a 3-foot drop. Like after the last step, you have to like jump down 3 feet to get to the ground.
This was quite funny, actually. I thought this was quite funny. So like they're looking down at the sand, and like the description was that it looked like it didn't look like real sand. It looked like someone had created sand based off a description of it, which I thought was really, you just like word of mouth what sand looks like to someone.
It's like,
and then
sand?
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
and
it's like really teeny tiny bits of glass, but like smooth.
Yeah. So whatever this like weird sleety, like bizarre, putrid gray looking sand is, it's not normal. So they've like gone and they've grabbed bikes and they've decided that they're going to cycle across the sand, which I think is fucking insane. It's like the idea of, have you ever ridden a bike over sand?
No, I don't imagine it's easy.
It's like, it depends, because it would have to be like really tight, compact sand. It can't have any give in it at all, otherwise the tires will just sink in. Which was
like if you find a sand trap, you're fucked.
Literally. So speaking of sand traps, Roger was looking down and he was like, "Dude, what if my Roger impression? What if there's like sandworms?" And then it like describes him like moving his arm up and down like a worm in the sand, or like
to be fair,
down there.
I
and, like,
did get Beetlejuice vibes from this.
That's fair. I mean, I haven't seen Beetlejuice. I was thinking of Dune.
Yeah,
I
mean Dune is another valid comparison.
Yeah. And then what was it? He was like, or like in Star Wars, where like the mouth opens up and everybody falls in. And Zila was like, "That's a sarlacc, actually." It's a sarlacc.
Sarlaccs
pit.
don't really move; they kind of stay put.
Yeah, they do. But yeah, and then during all of this like bickering and Roger being afraid, rightfully so, Tim was like, "For fuck's sake," just jumps down and is like, "Pass me a bike."
Yeah, no, I love that Tim is just like, "All right, you fucking wimps."
Yeah.
He just jumps down and he's like, "Give me a bike."
So yeah, they I think it was Veek, Tim, and Roger all already owned bikes.
Yeah. Nate had to
and
find one.
Nate like stole a bike off someone.
Tim gave everyone that was leaving the building a gun. Like, so they all clipped their guns to their belts. And then he had his guns strapped in holsters on his thighs.
Yeah.
And then he gave Clive a shotgun. And he said that he had loaded the shotgun with beanbags. So don't be afraid to shoot people with it if you need to.
I was like, that's kind of cool. And then I was like, someone's getting shot with that shotgun.
Yeah.
I think someone's getting shot with that shotgun the second he mentioned.
I mean, like, if you give someone a gun and you make a point of saying, "Hey, it's got beanbags in it, don't be afraid to shoot someone."
Yeah, someone's getting shot.
But then, like, before they leave, Zila's like, "Hey, be careful. Like, something's not quite right." And Veek's like, "Yeah, no shit." And she's like, "Fucking bitch. No, like, listen." And then she explains that the vanishing points are off, and Roger doesn't get it. And so then she's kind of like condescending, like she's like, "Vanishing points, sweetie." And then she kind of explains, like, if you look out in the distance, like, nothing lines up properly. And Tim was like, "I noticed that, but I didn't know how to articulate it."
So this is where my my round of homework that I've done first kicks in these following chapters. So I went after being like, the point where I was like, "Oh, regurgitated, recycled work, like pulling from someone else's work so blatantly," and it kind of like I found it a little bit off-putting. I was like, I'm saying that with absolutely no foundational knowledge of what H.P. Lovecraft actually wrote. And I was like, so the most popular or the most important piece of H.P. Lovecraft work, I guess, that was done was The Call of Cthulhu, and it's only a short little book. So I was like, I'm going to go and I'm going to listen to Call of Cthulhu so that when I listen back to this, I get a much better idea of what stuff is being pulled from where and where the influences are coming from and stuff. And this was something that's really weird in Call of Cthulhu in the descriptors in the final chapter.
Really?
Yeah. And it's like this section with vanishing point is weird. And also it relates to what happens when they're cycling. So does the cycling happen in this chapter?
The weird perspective shifts.
Yeah.
I was about to get into that. Does
so
perspective
let's
shifts
get
happen
into
in this
that.
chapter?
Yeah, let's get into that, and then I'll kind of like talk about in Call of Cthulhu what I think is being drawn from in this like weird perspective shit.
Well, okay, so they start cycling, right? And as they're going, Tim comments on like how quiet everything is. Like the only noise being made is the noises that they're making while they're cycling, which is unnerving. And then like as they're going, they're like, "Man, it feels like we're not moving at all." And then all of a sudden, like Veek's looking around, and then all of a sudden Nate's like a mile away. And he's like waving at them.
Yeah.
And then like Veek looks back behind her and Roger's like 2 football fields away or something. And like she can see him mouthing like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah. And then she like runs into Nate instantly.
Yeah.
And like
she's like, "Oh
him.
shit, I gotta go catch up to Nate." And then like rams into him.
Yeah. And it's so weird. It's like the perspectives that they have of distance and reality are just kind of wrong. So Tim then suggests that they all kind of tie rope together and look at the slack of the rope to see whether people are actually the distance ahead or whether it's like a forced perspective thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of a good idea.
Which is smart.
But also kind of not.
The perspective shift happened again, and that is what happened.
Yeah, like, same amount of slack.
Like there was still slack in the rope, even though it looked like, they were really far away.
Yeah.
And like, but Veek couldn't really look closely at the rope because if she tried to follow the rope, it hurt her eyes to like, see that perspective.
Yeah, which is really weird. But also, in Call of Cthulhu. Yeah, so what happens in the final chapter of Call of Cthulhu, right? So the whole premise of that book, right, just super quick rundown, is it's this guy who's, I think it's like his uncle or his grandfather or something, has died and has left all of his works as like a doctor and a researcher to the narrator of the book. And the narrator of the book finds like this weird section in all of his uncle's work or grandfather's work or whoever, labeled the Cthulhu cult, and it's 2 papers, one written by his grandfather, one written by, which is the first chapter, one written to do with like a police officer and like a raid that happened, and then the third one follows his research into a story of sailors who went out to sea. And so what basically all 3 of those chapters break down is the Cthulhu and a bunch of like these ancient deities are speaking to people in their dreams and creating narratives that call these people to like worship Cthulhu until such a time where Cthulhu can rise. And the idea is that Cthulhu is an alien that's landed on Earth, built a city. The city sank to the bottom of the ocean. And one day, when the stars align, the city will rise back out of the ocean and Cthulhu will be free. All right? And so that's the whole book in a nutshell. And the final chapter of this book talks about the sailors finding the city of Cthulhu.
It was Relia. I believe is how it's
Yeah,
pronounced.
Relia. So they find Relia in the middle of the fucking ocean as like this weird island city, and they like
Yeah.
pull up the boat, they get off, and they start like climbing across this weird, jagged, super abstract city rock building structure that hurts their eyes
Mm.
because where things look like they should be convexed, they're convexed. So as they're trying to like clamber and like climb and walk across this surface that looks a specific way, their experiences of it being the opposite of the way it looks. So they're like falling over and like struggling to walk, and they can't climb, and they're missing
It's like wearing
handholds
drunk
and like
goggles.
literally, yeah. And so during that time, Cthulhu like bursts out from the city and starts chasing them and eating them and killing them, and they're trying to run away, and the descriptor is like they're failing miserably to run away because they can't actually like grab hold of anything, and everything's covered in like this green sludgy ooze, which is so gross. But
Yeah.
that's looking after reading that and then coming back to this and listening to this and being like, oh, this is that like perceptual disconnection where people can't see the levels at which these objects and these dimensions kind of like exist. And so it just like messes with people's brains and they can't navigate it correctly. Also, that book, the most racist piece of literature I've read.
that was what I was gonna bring up if you didn't, because I remember it was like, I think it was the same day you called me and was like, okay, so I've been reading Call of Cthulhu, I gotta talk to you about it. And I was like, okay, yeah, tell me about Call of Cthulhu. What's up? And you were like, it's super racist.
It's really bad.
Like, oh, yeah.
It's really bad. I was like, I was in shock. I was reading it and I was just like, I was waiting for, I don't know, for at some point for there to be like, in a Western city somewhere, you know, like a small gathering of white people praising Cthulhu. And it was like, no, but every other culture across the world has these weird freaks that crawl around praising this god, because no white man could ever fall into such a treacherous and horrific state of perpetual insanity as to pray. Like, it was so fucking
white men
grim.
Already have a god.
Literally, it was. And
his
I was
name
like,
is Jehovah.
it was so fucked up. And like every single diabolical action that was committed during that book was at the fucking expense of a white person, done by someone who wasn't white. For the whole book, I was like, this is fucking horrific.
Yeah.
It was so bad. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I loved, because I told you, as soon as you told me, like, Lovecraft is really racist, I was like, oh yeah. And then I told you what his cat was called, which I'm not going to repeat here.
No, that's not.
But just go ahead and Google that, audience. Like, just Google what was Lovecraft's cat called.
Fucking wild. That is actually wild. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really unfortunate. Like, I think the thing that draws people to Lovecraft's writing is it stems from his intense racism, his intense xenophobia. This guy was afraid of so many things. Like, anything different from him, from his culture, this guy was afraid of it.
Yeah, and not
really
only
reflects in his writing.
Yeah, and not only that though. I think based on kind of like what I found out and like a little bit of research I did, H.P. Lovecraft's writing and about like existential horror
Yeah.
he was like one of the first to do it. Whereas like everything prior, or like most of the literature prior in the horror context was like gothic horror.
Like
and then
vampires and Frankenstein and that
and
kind
like
of thing.
ghosts and like it was all very gothic horror. And H.P. Lovecraft was like, but the universe is so vast that the scariest possible thing to find out is that everything is insignificant. All of humanity's struggles could be like completely worthless to like the entire universe, and there could be stuff much bigger, much stronger, much more intelligent, traveling through the universe and like communicating in ways that we don't understand to us. And like it's that existential. We know so little, and we are so weak, and everything that people care about is so insignificant. And that is kind of like where the horror in it comes from. So really interesting. Very much that as an ethos exists as a theme within this book, where it's like, because of Nate's job, it's like, it's hard to care about the things that matter when you find out that there is so much existential dread the building that you live in.
What is the point of giving a shit about your bullshit data entry job when you were in space yesterday?
Literally. And it's like that is kind of like the horror of H.P. Lovecraft, I guess. That in the way that I've kind of like understood it. So
no,
really
I think
cool.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, really cool. And also why they're like teleporting almost through the desert. It's like, I guess, a nod to that weird interdimensional or like reality warping experience that is touched on in the H.P. Lovecraft writing, which I quite like.
Something else that I wanted to touch on, because I mentioned it when you were originally telling me about Call of Cthulhu, because I'd never read that story, but you were telling me about like how when people get exposed to Cthulhu, they start dreaming about him and all that, and like wanting to. And I suggested maybe that's why nobody has dreams in the Kavach building. Maybe that was by design.
Yeah.
So that way, like, people couldn't be influenced by like other dimensional entities.
Yeah, and that is such a fucking good theory. Like, I remember when you told me that, I was like, that makes so much sense. That's so good. And that is really good. I think that might be my favorite theory that we've come up with for anything. I don't think we're going to get a conclusive answer at all ever, but I think that is definitely my favorite theory so far.
Yeah. But yeah, so the only other thing about this chapter I think worth mentioning is that so they have no idea what time it is, right? Like none of their cell phones work. Like when Veek looks at hers, it looks like Mandy's computer did when they first went to this dimension.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of them have watches, but if they did, I imagine none of them would work. I imagine they'd all be fucking wonky.
Yeah,
and so
that makes sense.
like Tim feels like he has a pretty good sense of time and is like, I feel like we've been like biking for 20 minutes. And so they're like, okay. So Nate's like, okay, we're going to trust Tim's sense of time because none of the rest of us have any idea what fucking time it is. We're going to try to get to that tower. If after an hour we haven't made any progress, we're going back to the building. Because they talk about how, like, at this rate, it could take, like, days for them to reach the ridge that they're trying to get to.
Yeah. Which is... Man, that's gotta be freaky as fuck.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know how far you've traveled until you just warp.
Yeah.
It's like you're just pedaling on the spot until you warp. That's fucking... I would be like, okay, I think it's time to turn around now. I think now is
first perspective shift. If I had been convinced to go and leave the building and venture into this fucking freaky unknown. The moment that happened, I'm turning back.
Yeah, yeah. Or I'm just drawing a fucking circle in the sand and sitting in it. And just being like, this will protect me. I'm staying here.
Fucking Dresden Files is getting to you, huh?
It really is, man. It really fucking is. Chapter 72. How the away team reached the tower.
So, this is the start of, like...
Something new. It feels so right to be here with you. Oh, sorry. You sang... you...
What?
I think I'm having a moment. Sorry.
Okay. What'd I miss?
I can't even remember what you said, but it was the lyric of a song from High School Musical, so I just decided to start singing.
So this chapter is the start of
something new. It'll be so right to be here with you. No, do you know? Yeah. Do you know what I did now? Do you get it?
I understand now.
Okay.
I understand now. Yeah. I've not watched High School Musical, but I understand now.
Blasphemy.
So, in this chapter and quite a few of the coming up chapters, we get two, sometimes more than two perspectives. Like it's focusing on the group of people that stayed in the building and then switching to the away team, right? So Zila is looking at the control panel and she's just like, I have no fucking idea what I'm doing. And then Clav was like, maybe you should have mentioned that before they all left. And she's like, it's not like they know any better than I do.
That's very true.
And so, she's just like looking at all this shit and she's like, I don't have any fucking idea. And Debbie's like, well, I can help you. Let me help. Like I took a class about like basic wiring when I was, when I was in college.
Yeah.
When in her early days of college, and Clive's like, okay, but I mean, this isn't like basic. And she's like, I mean, it's what we've got. And then like Zila is optimistic about it. She's like, well, I'm sure an artist and a biochemist can figure this out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, what a dream team.
Yeah.
The world
Yeah.
relies. What if at this point, they like actually turned the machine back on and they just went back and left the away team?
I mean, it would
and
be
they just,
the best thing for the world, but it would suck for them.
It would be too funny, because what if they just applied like Mrs. Knight logic to it?
How do you mean?
Like, well, they're lost in a different dimension, probably eaten by those squales. There's absolutely no way we can legitimately save them. And I think it's way too dangerous for us to start touching the machine again, and they just like logic it out, and they're like, well, all of them are dead.
They're all dead.
They
left.
Dead.
They're not coming back.
Yeah. Fuck.
Anyway. So the POV, the point of view, it shifts back to the away team. They had like another perspective shift, this time that positioned them claustrophobically close to each other, but then miles away from each other.
Yeah.
And like like Nate described like his field of view being fucked up, and like, when he held up his hand, like his fingernails disappeared and looked miles away.
Yeah, that's so fucking weird.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way to imagine that, except
like,
for
literally,
like,
I think the only thing that kept them sane was the fact that Tim tied all of their bikes together with rope.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. So it's so fucking. I'd melt down. I would literally be like, I'm not going anywhere. I can't do this. I gotta go back.
You can't trust your eyes. Like, that's just so. Ugh.
Literally. Yeah,
but
terrifying.
So they finally reach the ridge that they were biking towards before their hour is up. But when they looked back, the Kavach building, it still looked like it was like a mile away.
Yeah. So fucked.
And like when they got there, it was clear to them that the tower was like beyond the ridge, but it was like hazy to look at.
Yeah. Do you reckon that it's like the rifts of travel are like barriers that would be like planes of glass? So it's like when you look backwards, you're looking through all of the dimensional warps. Do you get what I mean?
All the perspective shifts.
Yeah. So like every single perspective shift is like lenses on a glass, on like a pair of glasses. So like it's like stacking different lenses in front of each other, you know. So every time you travel through one, there's like it'll change the perspective of what you see in the distance on either side because you're adding or removing a layer of perspective distortion.
Maybe. But that would be dependent on like these perspective shifts being in the same places every time, right?
True.
And I'm not sure that they are.
That's fair. I wonder.
Like I'm not sure you can apply real world logic to like a nightmare scape like this.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair point. I would just be I would have to test it as well. I'd have to see whether it was in the same, because like you'd go through one and then you turn around and you'd see if you could go back through it exactly the same way, you know?
Yeah.
And see see
they
if
didn't
it was
test that,
consistent.
though, I don't
No, they
think.
didn't. They were probably like no time, no time for research.
Yeah. And let's be realistic, Jake. You would have made a circle in the sand and said, "Nope, I'm good."
Yeah. I would have muttered some fucking gibberish and just and just like, you know, fuego.
I'm safe.
Like,
yeah. So Nate gets off his bike and Tim's like, "Get down. You don't want them to see you. Whatever's over there." So he's like, "Okay." So they all like start crawling along the sand, but like the sand felt like tiny shards of glass that had no moisture, which that stood out to me because it's like, I mean, it's sand. What moisture is there going to be in the sand? You're not on a beach. But like, I guess sand does have a little bit of moisture to it. So like the idea that it's just like completely dry. Like he was worried about the sand sucking moisture out of him. That's how dry it was.
Yeah. That's so weird.
But yeah, so the chapter just kind of ends with them poking their heads over the ridge, and Roger's like, "Fuck me."
Yeah.
Chapter 73: How the away team found Oscar at the tower and discovered his corpse had been desecrated. So we shift to Zila again. It occurred to her that they were like approaching all of this the wrong way. Like she was looking at Andrew and she's like, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he was doing either.
Yeah.
Like he and his family, they just started fucking with the control panel. So she was like thinking about like this ergonomically. She's like, okay, he and I are about the same height. So like if I wanted to flip a switch, I would flip this one, etc. And she was like, I need a flashlight. And so Debbie gave her one and she used it to kind of like look at the dust on the switches, and she saw that about 2/3 of the switches were covered in dust, and the ones that they flipped were clean.
Yeah, and this was really good. And at this point, I was like, and I clicked this straight away. I was like, they could absolutely find all of the switches on this board, right? That don't have dust on them, that have like oil from the fingers, you know, all the dials that were twisted upside down. But if they flick all of those switches back, the machine still won't work. Because they will flip back the switch that Roger flipped.
That occurred to you?
Straight away. Like, literally straight away. I was like, the one that Roger flipped is in amongst this. Because it's like, they would possibly have flipped. This crossed my mind as well. I was like, they possibly would have also flipped the switch that Roger flipped if they're going by ergonomics. So it's like, if they switch the machine back on, right, and it doesn't work, then it's because of the Rogers switch thing. You know?
Right.
That was that literally, and I clicked it so fucking quickly. Yeah. So that was my thoughts on that
I didn't even
section.
think about that on rereads. Like,
Did
I
you
was
not?
like, I like just when I was going through it this time around, that did not occur to me. I think it's cool that you trigged to that.
Yeah, I was pretty happy. I feel like I've been very switched on throughout this whole thing, which is like because what is it? Because I've been listening to like other books. I've been way more switched on during this read than I have with any of the books that I've been listening to. So even when I was listening to Dresden Files, I wasn't reflecting in between chapters. I was just listening. And I let so many blatant pieces of information and like easy to conclude things fall through the cracks in a way that I was really disappointed in myself, considering how well I've done through this read.
Well, that's the fun thing about this podcast, right?
Yeah.
Like, it makes you think about the book in a way that you normally wouldn't. Which is why I like covering books on this podcast.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. It's made me feel like I'm a mildly passable detective. Where are the clues? Give me the clues. Yeah, so that was my first thought after that. I was like, Roger also flipped a switch. And so by their logic, if they're putting it back, if that switch hasn't been flipped, they're going to flip it again, which will mean that the machine won't work. So very interesting. And I was super excited to see what happened with that idea as well. And if it even if the dust shit even actually works, you know. Because I'm like, I was very confused given the amount of fucking air that was blasting in as to how stable the dust was on the surface as well.
This episode is not brought to you by Brock Lesnar. So for the audience at home, Jake, who is Brock Lesnar?
Brock Lesnar is he was an NFL player turned pro wrestler I think he was pro wrestler first. One or the other. It was like pro wrestler, NFL, pro wrestler, UFC pro wrestler. That is something like that is the run of his current career. He is a mountain of a man, and he looks like a smaller person is in the body of like you know the trap muscles on someone's neck?
Yeah.
His trap muscles look like the shoulder of a skinnier man, just controlling this muscular form. Like, look at pictures of Brock Lesnar, cover his like shoulders, look at like his trap muscles, and tell me they don't look like skinnier man shoulders. Like, do it right now. Do it while we're doing this segment.
Okay.
Do it right now.
All right, I will do this right now. Brock Lesnar. You want me to cover up his head or to cover up his lower torso?
So from his like actual shoulders, but you keep the parts of the muscle that are connecting to his neck.
Those look like his shoulders.
Yeah, if he was a skinnier man.
Then you pull back, and then there's more.
Yeah.
This is absurd. I have a better understanding of why you and your brother would meme this man all the time.
Yeah.
Because this is what, like, I just have fond memories of you two. Like, whenever we were playing video games, you two would just start going on about Brock Lesnar, and I'd be like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Wait, when was this? I genuinely don't remember this at all.
Well, I do, which is why I thought to bring it up.
He was world champion in the UFC, which is fucking wild. Like, actually wild. In heavyweight as well. Oh, he couldn't be fucking anything else, but in the heavyweight division, absolute killer. And then he had a stomach surgery, and Alistair Overeem kicked him in the gut. And
did he have a hernia?
And he folded. No, he had some sort of surgery that, like, I think he had to have part of, like, his intestines removed or something. I don't know.
Okay.
He had some sort of, like, what the fuck, like, intestinal surgery.
Gastrointestinal.
Yeah, there we go. That
GI
one. He had some
surgery.
Yeah, he had GI surgery. And then he came back, like, and this guy called Alistair Overeem, who is a K1 kickboxer, who, at the time that this fight happened, the UFC was, like, the Wild West when it came to, like, steroid testing, you know? They weren't as bad as, like, Pride in Japan used to be, but, like, in the UFC, it was the Wild West days. And this guy who everybody called Ubereem because he was just on such, like, ridiculous, kicks him in the gut.
Kicked him.
Yeah, Ubereem, because his name is Alistair Overeem. So they just put Uber in front of, like, the last section of his last name.
Ubereem, I see.
Yeah, Ubereem, and just kicked him in the gut. He folded because he was fresh out of surgery. And then, yeah. Brock Lesnar.
That's what you did. That's what you
actually?
guys did. Yeah, as you can tell, this is not an ad. This is not an ad for wrestling or for Brock Lesnar or anything like that. We don't have ads on this show. We'd like to. If you'd like to sponsor this show or shoot an ad my way that I could plug in the mid-break, that would be awesome. You can reach out to me at funk.lit.pod@gmail.com. That is func.lit.pod@gmail.com. If you're an ordinary person who would like to support the show, you can sign up for the Functionally Literate Patreon. Minimum of $1 to sign up for that. And if you do, you will get access to every single episode that has come out ad-free. We don't have ads, but we do have mid-breaks, so you get to skip this bit.
Whoop, whoop.
If you like this bit, but you'd still like to support the show, you can contribute to the PayPal. There are links to all of that in the description below. As well, this is a read-along book club, so if you want to read along, I highly encourage you to use the links in the episode description to buy your books, because those are affiliate links, which means I get a little bit of money kicked back my way for every purchase. Anyway, back to the show. It kind of ends with Zila like, okay, I'm gonna draw this console. So then the point of view switches back to the away team, and this was interesting, right? So like they see what is around the tower. It's like the tower's base is in this massive crater that's maybe like half a mile deep, and they realize the reason why the tower looked hazy was because of how tall it was. Like it was literally a skyscraper. That's how tall this thing was.
Yeah.
It looked like an obelisk, and it was engraved all over with strange patterns, and in the crater looked like a small city.
Yeah. This is the exact description of the city from minus the green ooze from Call of Cthulhu.
Wait, so this matched the description of Relia?
Yeah.
So then does that mean that the big-ass squale is Cthulhu then?
Yeah, absolutely. The squale, legitimately is Cthulhu, and the city matches the description of Relia, and the squale's description kind of also matches descriptions of Cthulhu, in more than I originally thought. Because when they passed through, I was legitimately thinking of a whale with like bat wings and a squid head, and I was like, But then they describe like the legs and there's like talons and shit, and it's like they're actually kind of slim and like scaly dragon-like, and it's like, oh, they are Cthulhu. Like they're absolutely Cthulhu.
So we've got big Cthulhu and then
little
baby Cthulhu.
Yeah, baby Cthulhu's.
So Nate was like looking at this fucking city that apparently is Relia, that's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's because the towers and stuff the engravings and things, like that's all in the descriptions as well. It's like how the spires look, and all the engravings on them. It matched up very well. I was like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. So yeah, Relia.
In this city, like, I mean, just in the crater in general, like halfway down the slope, they saw men and women clawing at the sand, and there were other people like hauling rocks, and they were like speculating about how there could possibly be people here. And like Nate's like, they look naked, and Tim's like looking through his binoculars, and he's like, they're not completely naked. They're wearing collars.
Yeah, which very spicy. Also, they're very Neanderthal-y.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
this
like,
is
Beak was looking at them as well, and she's like, they look like Neanderthals. Like, just because of like the way their faces were shaped. They looked, it seemed very reminiscent of like cavemen.
This is kind of why I was thinking that this was kind of like the Cthulhu creatures on a different dimensional version of Earth, where it was like they appeared in a younger version of Earth, if that makes sense. So like when Neanderthals were a thing, and then obviously Neanderthals weren't able to evolve enough to be people, I guess, at that point, you know? Like the evolution changed.
As advanced as we were.
Yeah, exactly. Because the things that make a Neanderthal were like slowly worked out through evolution of what survived and what became more important and like those sorts of things. But then it's like these Neanderthal are all like enslaved, so there's no opportunity for there to be any natural development in that sort of way, I guess. Like different values would be held for survival in this universe to our current universe. So they would kind of just end up perpetually being Neanderthal-y.
So you've got these slaves that are being watched over by... They're referred to as overseers, but they're like weird mutant things. Like they're bipedal. They're wearing like cloaks that are the same color as the sand, so they're hard to like see right away.
Yeah.
They've got like sharp chins, needle-like teeth. They're all holding spears. Nate, when he was looking at one, like he was looking at its hands, and it reminded him of the old woman's skin, which I assume he was referring to Auntie Bradbury there.
Yeah, I think he was. Which is very strange. Is that then a suggestion that Auntie Bradbury and the other members of the family are some variation of these like bipedal creatures?
I think so, yeah, because there was references in future chapters, but I didn't notate them, so I'm just going to mention it here. There were references to similarities between the family and these overseers.
Interesting. That I kind of missed, I think.
Yeah, and
it's
so
cool,
like
though.
Nate was looking at one, and like it looked to him like the man like was maybe keeping a tally, either that or he was like he had a twitch in his hand, and that's when he realized the man had 3 arms, because he was like keeping a tally with one hand, but he had 2 hands on a spear, so he's like, oh my god.
Yeah.
And then Tim was like, oh my god, they all have a functional 3rd arm.
Yeah, freaky weird. I don't like it. Kind of reminds me of the cockroaches.
Yeah. Well, they referenced the cockroaches too. When they saw that, they were like, it's like the cockroaches. They all have an extra appendage. And then Tim was assessing the situation, and he's like, I think there's around 6,000 slaves and around 500 guards.
I mean, Tim's weird skills are weird. I don't know. It's like he occasionally is like, I have an internal clock that like is super accurate, you know. It's like, okay, so he's like able to just kind of tell how much time has passed better than most people. That I can
He's
buy.
secret agent man.
He is secret agent man, right? There's no way his fucking publishing company published a book on how to guesstimate accurately how many fucking people are in a crowd. It's like, yeah. So they do that. They talk about that, and then all of a sudden, the fucking squid creatures, the Cthulhus, decide to bob their tentacles into frame, I guess.
We skipped a bit. There's a little bit there that we skipped.
Ooh.
That's what happens at the end of the chapter.
Okay.
So Nate's looking around. Like, he's looking at the tower itself. Like, he sees that. He's guessing it's about 2 miles away. And the tower, like, because he's using, like, the city itself as, like, reference. He thinks that the tower itself must be, like, maybe a 1/4 mile wide. And it's got like 8 sides to it, or was it 6 sides? It was more than 4. And then Tim's like, "There's no way we're gonna get to that tower. Like, with the sheer number of guards. Like, even if there were 0 guards, this place is the equivalent of 5 pentagons. Like, it would take us years to find Oscar in this place."
Yeah, which is kind of wild, like a pantheon of squid creatures. And their overseers and slaves. Yeah, don't like it.
So then Veek, she looks at her phone and she realizes that the symbols on her phone are all over the tower and the buildings.
Yeah.
Like, she's talking about that. And then she just drops her binoculars. And Nate's like, "What's wrong?" And she's like, "I found Oscar. Most of him."
Yeah, and then this is where they kind of explain that Oscar was ripped in half and had all of his innards sucked out by and he's just being propped up by his rib cage. So grim, so unexpectedly grim. Yeah, this was more gnarly than I was expecting, actually.
Yeah. And Tim was like, he probably died from shock when he was grabbed.
Yeah,
but he didn't
kind of
sound
like,
certain about it.
Yeah,
like, that seems like more like wishful thinking to me.
Yeah, I think it was not even for him. It was just for the other people. You know, it's just for like Nate, Veek, and Roger, so that they can kind of like keep their heads on, you know, and not think about whether or not he suffered. It's like he died of shock, just like throwing them a softball. So like, don't think too hard about it. Keep your head in the game, sort of thing.
I mean, that is possible, because if you recall, he was grabbed by his head and yanked out of the building. That could have snapped his neck.
True.
Could have.
Yeah. Or it could have been agonizing. So it's like much, you know, it's, And I don't know, it could have broken his neck. He could have still been alive. And then he could have watched it suck his innards out. But it's like, these are the speculations that I feel like Tim is trying to have be avoided.
Absolutely. I don't want to think about the possibility that he was alive to get chopped in half.
I know, which not very nice at all. And then
like you were saying, the chapter ends with the wind picking up and Veek realizing that the Cthulhus were coming back.
Yeah, the squales.
Now that we've confirmed that like these things are described like Cthulhu, I can't think of them as squales.
Yeah, I know. Neither can I. They're literally just Cthulhus, because they literally use the psychic attacks that Cthulhu uses as well.
Do they talk the same way in Call of Cthulhu?
You don't really know, because nobody in the book ever really. Oh, I can't remember. It might be in the sailors section mentioning it. It does talk about how it, like, Cthulhu infects people's dreams and shows them imagery and, like, you know. So there is that. It is like communication through psychic language. And also it's like the idea that there's multiple creatures in the city where Cthulhu lay.
Right.
And they all communicate with each other psychically, and they're all just waiting. And they're completely awake, but they're just kind of like in a hibernation state. and they're just communicating with each other constantly and with people who are like right on the cusp of being like psychic sensitive people. So they communicate with those people because they're the most vulnerable and the most easy to communicate with.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is kind of like it lends itself to the idea that these Cthulhu creatures in this book are forcing imagery and thoughts for communication into the tenants' minds. Chapter 74: How the away team was discovered by the Squales.
So these fucking things start flying around the tower, and they feel the biggest one thinking at them again, which is just fucking nightmarish.
Yeah. Food, eat, cattle, my
Prey,
my prey.
my food, my prey, my cattle, my new world. Yeah, like just fucking
Horror.
God damn.
I know.
And so, like, Roger curled up into a ball, and like all of their orifices started bleeding again.
And then Nate makes the fatal error of looking in its big old orb of an eye in its mouth.
Yeah, so, well, jumping ahead a smidge.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So, like, they're flying around, and they all start, like, grabbing
yeah.
slaves and guards to eat.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't seem like they cared whether it was a guard or not.
Well, they kind of cared, right? Because the guards were like, they had their arms up in the air like they wanted to be eaten. They were like, yeah, come get me, come eat me, yay. The slaves were running, and the creatures seemed to prefer eating the ones that were running away.
Yeah, that's something that Veek noticed.
And so then they like all of them, like after they eat, they all fly into, so there's like a dome. The dome is where Oscar's body was nearby. Like they all fly into the dome, and one of them, like as an afterthought, take what's left of Oscar's body.
Yeah.
And so then after that, the big one, which I'm going to think of as Cthulhu.
Yeah.
Cthulhu flies over up to the top of the tower, and there's like a structure there designed to hold his, like a contraption on top of the tower designed to hold it like it's a massive form.
Yeah.
And then it like wraps itself around the tower, and then like two of its tentacles opened like flowers, revealing like large emerald eyes just looking at the city, still thinking at them. Like telling the people to like serve and pray to him or it, and then like calling them food, prey, cattle, going on about its new world. And Tim was like, oh shit, it knows that the building is off. This is like a final meeting before they all come to our world.
And then this was where Cthulhu looked at Nate. And Nate,
and it was like Nate was the creature almost, because like he could tell exactly what this thing was thinking.
Yeah, and it was so interesting because it was like the hunger was unbearable, and then it was the idea that it was like there was a time where there wasn't this hunger, but it was so long ago that you like wouldn't be able to even, it's like a distant idea of a possibility of a time where it could have happened. You know, it was like so faint, and
like
all that it's known was hunger.
Is this unending void of hunger that must be satiated but can't.
Yeah, which that in and of itself is fucking horrific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then Veek slaps him and brings him back to reality.
Yeah.
Roger pissed himself.
So did Nate.
Yeah.
They both just pissed themselves. They were like terrified. They get dragged out of it. Yeah. And they're like, oh shit, we've gotta go.
And it was when they started to leave that the thing sounded the alarm. Yeah. Cthulhu was like, hey, there's people here, go get them. And then like they all started cheering. Yeah. And the chapter ends with like Nate knew that it was a hungry roar. Like, these things were gonna eat them if they caught them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, death. Death is coming for them.
Death.
Death is definitely coming for them. And, like, it's speaking into their minds the whole time as well.
Like, it was like, because the interesting thing about it was, like, Cthulhu didn't exclude them from that message.
No.
It projected it out to everyone.
Yeah. Which I think is very interesting. Do you think that it's a choice? Do you think they can choose who they project it to?
I bet that the thing is so powerful that I don't think it could, like, limit itself to what it talks to.
Yeah, because that's kind of like speaking, isn't it? It's like kind of like there's a radius to it, like certain people can't hear you after a certain distance sort of thing. So if it's just it could just be like talking, where it's like anybody within the vicinity who has like a brain supple enough to receive the frequencies, I guess, you know, like
Right.
just forced in. Yeah, I wonder how that works.
Chapter 75, How Tim was slain by a mutant. Jake, I'm sorry your favorite character died.
Yeah. I was fucking gutted.
Yeah.
I was praying it was Roger. Yeah, I was hoping it was Roger. I was so praying it was gonna be Roger. They were so like suggesting it would be Roger.
What indicated to you that it was going to be Roger?
The descriptions of how poorly Roger was handling the soul gaze and the images being forced into his mind, how much he
Yeah.
was bleeding from his nose and his ears and his mouth, and you know,
Yeah.
and how pale and like how much he looked like he was just withering away to death.
It's true. He was handling it the most poorly.
Yeah, and that's. Here's a side note on that. I don't know why they took Veek on the fucking bike ride.
Yeah, why the fuck did they do that? Because she started having an asthma attack on their way back.
I know. Stupid. Stupid people.
Stupid.
Why didn't Nate go, that's a good idea. Let's bring my fucking asthmatic girlfriend along. Stupid. Zero fucking concern for her.
Yeah.
Let's go on a road trip together.
But
Fucking
so the
idiot.
start of this chapter is again from Zila's. No, it's not from Zila's point of view, but it's from like the people in the Kavach building's point of view. It's from Clive's point of view here. So
Yeah.
Clive is like looking at Zila's drawings, like it was all life size, so it could be like as clear as possible, and it was described as looking like concept art for an H.G. Wells movie. Mandy was there with them, but she was like basically catatonic. She was useless. She said nothing.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah.
fair. That's fair enough.
Yeah. Andrew was there silently praying, and like Clive found him unnerving. Like he was holding the shotgun the whole time, ready to shoot Andrew if he needed to.
Yeah.
And then Zila was like, I think I got it all figured out. And so she showed Clive and Debbie like what she had made so far. And like one of them, I don't remember which one, but one of them asked like, well, what's up with the shaded switches? And she's like, those are the ones that are in the position they need to be. I drew it that way so we can shade in the other switches as we flip them.
Yeah.
And then Debbie's like, maybe you should make duplicates just in case we screw up while we're trying to fix this.
Yes. And also, she noted that you should also put in the dials and where the dials should be.
Yeah.
Like
just for reference.
the pins, you know, set at 0. They
Yeah.
should all be set at 0. Zila was like, why? We already know that they should be at 0, you know? And it's like, well, we're in this situation due to a lack of people writing shit down. So maybe, maybe it's worth it.
Debbie makes that suggestion that like she make duplicates, and Clive's like, that's a good idea. And then that's when Andrew moved, and he was smiling, and he said, and I quoted it. He said, "The Lord is coming. He's coming to smash this awful place to dust." And it was described as though somebody was talking about their shopping list. And so I think what you said about Cthulhu's like mind speech, I think there's a ring of truth to it. I think there is a level of like sensitivity to it. Like I think there's range, but then there's also like how sensitive are you to it. So like I'm wondering if Andrew heard in his mind what Cthulhu said.
Yeah, I think he did. I think he did at this point. Yeah, and the others aren't attuned to it, and they're too far away to have it hit them, which is interesting. So yeah, it's got to be like a proximity, or like attunement thing, which is cool. It's very, it's like the attunement thing is kind of like in alignment with the Call of Cthulhu ethos as well. It's cool. At least he understood the source material that he's like pulling from enough to write these ideas in and get them like fairly accurate to what's going on, you know?
Yeah,
it's good.
So the point of view shifts back to the away team.
Yeah, this does not go well, does it? So they're cycling. They're like the description of how Tim dies it caught me off guard so much.
Like Nate couldn't accept what was happening when it happened.
Yeah, it was wild. So like they're riding, and then these fucking weird creatures are hurling. They're like running on their like weird legs and hands, and the third arm is throwing these spears at them, and the spears like hitting the sand between them, and then it's like the spears are also flying through the air and through the distortion shifts, so you don't know how close they are either, which is terrifying. So it's like you're riding and the spears are flying through the air, and then all of a sudden they'll be a mile away, and then they're right next to you. Horror. And so they're riding away, and Nate looks over to Tim, sees Tim riding. And so before this happens, actually, Tim sees Roger reach for his gun and is like, "You couldn't shoot them if you were standing still, and you don't have a goddamn chance of hitting anything, and it's going to slow us down, and it will get us all killed. So put your fucking gun away." Don't even think
he was
about
dead
it.
on.
Yeah.
Like, looking back is slowing you down, and you can't even fucking tell. Like, looking back is just gonna scare you.
Literally. And there's literally no point. Because, like you said, you can't tell. Like, the distortion means you don't know whether they're a mile away or whether they're right on your heels, or, like, you know, how many distortions ago are there? And so, they're heading back, and then Nate looks at Tim, and then he's
been struck with a spear.
Yeah, but the way they described it was so good. It was like there was I can't remember exactly how they described it.
So as I recall, it was like suddenly Nate was looking and he saw that Tim was holding a spear, but like it looked too short. Like it only had like a foot of length to the shaft, and he's like, "Oh, that's weird." Like he doesn't know how he could have fit it in his shirt. Like, why would that be?
And it was like covered in like paint, and like the description was very like, it was like his brain couldn't piece together what had happened. It's like, is that paint? Why is he holding a shorter version of the spears up to his chest? And then it was like Tim just eats it into the sand.
Yeah. Yeah, because a fucking javelin went through his torso, so, you know, he's gonna fall down.
I know. And then
like he's just like sputtering. He's like, "No," and then he's like, "Save the others, save everyone. And Nate's like, that means you too, old man. And he's like, I'm just gonna still kick your ass. And he's like, go, get home. I'll buy you some time. And then he died.
And well, before he died, he like slapped Nate, and he was like, "I told you I'd kick your ass."
Yeah.
Best character. Yeah.
Like, to his dying breath, he's like, I'll save you.
Literally. So good. Such a great character. And
it really is a shame that he died.
I know. I wish it was Roger. Because I do, because like I don't know, like I like Roger's character, but I feel like it's way more impactful. It means more if Roger dies.
It would certainly upset Zila.
Yeah, literally. It's like there's more impact to the group and the dynamic of the group if Roger dies. If Tim dies, it's like, what, the old guy who has no family, who's just friends with these people, like, he dies, but there's no bigger impact. Do you get what I mean? It's like, I feel like Roger...
It's worse than Mrs. Knight being dead, but it's not as bad.
Yeah, I feel like it's a cop-out death.
Another cop-out death in your mind. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like it is a cop-out death. And it's also like, it feels like, oh, I've got to kill Tim because he's the most equipped to deal with, like, Andrew if Andrew plays up. So now it's got to, like, they've got to build the villain back up and make him scarier again by removing the person that can deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get what I mean? So it's like, I understand
why
it's happened like this and why Tim was the one who had to die. It's like trying to raise the stakes by killing him instead of just making the villain, I guess, stronger than him to begin with. Yeah. Do you get what I mean? I feel like it's just convenience for the writing rather than adding to the story in a more meaningful way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it absolutely does. Like, I mean, you're right, because like you said, who among them other than Tim could handle Andrew? And the reality is, like,
no one.
None of them could.
Yeah. So it's like Andrew now becomes scary villain again. Chapter 76, How the tenants of Kavach secured the building from the mutants.
So this picks up right after Tim dies, and it kind of talks about Nate thinking about what he would have done if this was a movie for a moment.
Yeah.
But, like, in reality, they were still under attack, and so they had to run. Fortunately, they were really close to the building. So, like, when they run, Roger's already on the steps. And he's like, come on. he did not stop when Tim fell.
So, yeah, they get in through the door. And they start bolting
Roger
it closed.
Helps them up, and they shut the security door.
Mm-hmm. And then Veek starts heading up straight away. I do believe, huffing on her asthma pump, she heads straight up to the control room.
Yeah, Nate told her to go get Clive and tell him to come back with supplies to barricade the door. The first mutant to reach the security door was like shaking it, and like the thing was close enough that Nate could see that it had 3 eyes.
Creepy.
Yeah.
These things don't look right in my head.
I picture it like it has a second eye over one of its other eyes. It's not, like, designed neatly.
Okay. For me, it was like a uniform 3 eyes, a triclops, if you will.
Yeah, no, I did not picture it that way. I picture it like it has either a third eye above its left eye or, like, on its cheek or something.
Creepy. I don't like your vision. Yeah. My vision is much more pleasant.
Well, yeah, that's why your version's wrong, because these mutants are not pleasant to look at.
That's I think in my head I want them to be. Okay? Maybe I want pleasant mutants in my brain.
So there was a small time jump here, right? Like
Yeah.
it jumps to Clive like almost done with the barricade, and he asked Nate if Tim was dead, and then Nate kind of like flashes on his memories of Tim and all the good times they had.
Yeah.
And then he was like, "Yeah, he is." And then Clive was like, "Are you sure he's dead?" And then Nate realized what he was driving at, and he's like, "Yes, he died quickly." So, to be clear, because the narrative wasn't explicit, what do you think Clive was driving at here when he was like, "Are you sure?"
I don't know exactly. It's like, was he dead, like dead, or was he just dying and you've left him out there to just be ripped apart by these savage creatures? Is kind of like what I assumed.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what Clive was driving at too.
Yeah. And it's like, no, he was like, lights were out when we left.
And so, Clive finishes the barricade, and he's like, talking about how they could improve it by breaking down the loft, like taking one of the legs from the loft. And then he interrupts himself. He's like, shit. And Nate realized, like, he'd never heard the man swear before.
Yeah. And then they realized the fucking back door was open.
Yeah, still just fucking wide open. Because apparently everybody keeps that thing propped open with a cinder block.
Which is so stupid.
For a moment, the point of view shifts back to Debbie, who she picked up the shotgun when Clive went to build the barricade. Like, she kept her focus on Andrew. And so Zila is telling Veek now, like, about what she had done and, like, how she held off on most of it, like, resetting the control panel because she didn't want to, like, accidentally leave them behind.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And so then Zila was like, did everyone make it back? And Veek said everyone, purposefully not telling Zila about Tim, which kind of reinforces what you were saying before. Like, this would have worked really well with Roger if Veek purposefully lied to Zila about Roger being alive.
Yeah.
So this bit annoyed me, and it's not like that Veek withheld information, but that the narrative slipped here. Because when the scene started, it was focused on Debbie's thoughts, and then partway through, it focused on Veek's thoughts. And that annoyed me, because up to this point, the narrative has been careful to focus on one character's point of view at a time.
Yeah.
But here, the narrative slipped, and that annoyed me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't even pick up on that.
It's something that I think about because I was in a writing class when I was in college, and it was something that my professor made a big deal about. Like, he would dock points for that.
That makes perfect sense, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be, if you're jumping to the thoughts of every individual character all the time, that's going to get fucking tiring and impossible to follow and confusing.
It's funny that you mentioned that because, so for posterity, everyone, I am recording with someone else, a different book, Dune. And Dune does that. Like, fucking, like, the whole fucking book, you're in everybody's head. You're hearing, you're privy to everybody's thoughts.
Jesus.
And I don't care for it.
Yeah, it seems a bit much. I think that having a very clear, concise idea of whose mind you're in and not flip-flopping in very fast-paced ways. Because I would just get lost. I wouldn't know who the fuck's thoughts I'd be reading. I wouldn't be able to relate it to the character.
Yeah.
At all.
So Zila, she got to work in earnest, like putting the control panel back to where it needed to be. And then that was when Andrew attacked Veek, right?
Yeah.
And then Debbie shot him, but it didn't stop him. And so then he took the shotgun from her, hit her with it, shot Veek, and then that was when Mandy broke, right? Like, she attacked Andrew like a fucking feral cat or something. And Andrew just, like, tossed her aside and then left the apartment.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is kind of like why Tim had to die.
Yeah, because he would have fucking taken this guy out.
Literally, it would have been fucking
Totally.
over. Yeah. I don't know, I'm still annoyed about it, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm still like kind of
it should have been
seething.
Roger.
Literally. Oh well.
So the POV, it shifts back to Clive and Nate. So they're running to the back, intending to kick away the cinder block everyone used to keep the fence propped open. So this is where I had another one of those, like, visualization issues again. Like, I couldn't picture exactly what the problem was.
Yeah, me too. I really couldn't see what the fuck the issue was. It was like Nate was just hitting, he was just kicking a cinder block and breaking his toes, basically. Like, that's all he was doing.
It was something to do with Annie Bradbury's body, right? Like, her body was in the way or something. And so, like, he finally gets the cinder block away, and he's trying to shut this fucking thing. And then one of the mutants has climbed up the concrete slab and is, like, coming at them.
Yeah.
And, like, but instead of coming for them, it starts eating Bradbury's body. And so... like, and then they finally get the fucking thing shut, and then he run back inside.
Yeah, it was weird for me, because it took him, like, 3 attempts or something to get the breeze block out the way. I'm like, why?
I don't know. Like, I listened to it a couple times, and I just couldn't work it out.
Neither could I. I listened to it a couple of times as well. And it was like, his hip was hurting, his foot was hurting, you know, and so, like, he's kicking this breeze block. But I'm like, stop kicking it and just fucking push it. Like, if you kick a breeze block, you're gonna fucking hurt yourself. What are you doing? You're just being a thick boy.
They're just panicking.
It's so dumb.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
And so then, like, the chapter ends with them, like, hearing a shotgun blast, and Roger is still, like, over by the front door, and he looks at Nate, and he's like, get the machine back on! And then, like, that's how the chapter ends.
Yeah.
And so that's gonna do it for this episode. That's where we're at.
It's been a good episode. I've enjoyed this episode. A lot's happened.
Yeah, a lot's happened.
Tim is dead.
Tim's dead.
And I feel like it was a boring choice.
A boring choice. Damn.
Yeah.
I think, thinking about it, I think you're right. I think that you're right. It should have been Roger.
It should have been Roger.
But I'm biased because I just didn't want Tim to die.
Or Veek.
Ooh.
It should have been Veek. Veek should have had an asthma attack and been eaten alive.
Should have denied Nate his happy ending.
Yeah. And then like the rest of the book would be like just Nate being bitter.
Alas, Peter Clines is a compromiser.
Yes. It seems. So okay. It seems.
Well, we're gonna wrap up.
Yeah.
We have one more episode left.
Ooh.
Okay,
it's been fun.
All you people at home, your homework is to finish the book, assuming you haven't already.
Yeah, finish the goddamn book. We'll slacking.
Catch you in 2 weeks, and maybe think about reading Call of Cthulhu while you're at it.
Yeah, it's a lot of interesting parallels, you know, for obvious reasons, and just brace yourself for the racism. Just be braced for that. If you are going to read it, yeah. And apart from that, have a lovely time. This has been Functionally Literate.
Bye-bye!
Bye-bye!